Well, welcome everybody. It's great to see such a big turnout. And my name is Britt Ide, and I'm doing the introduction of the event for each of our candidates. And then we've asked a woman lawyer, specific introduction of the governor, and then next in series with AJ Bluma. And this, I'm really excited about this event because we did this 4 years ago at the last time the governor election was up. And it was a great way to really engage with the governor, hear his perspective in a very small setting, ask a lot of questions. You ladies can come sit up at the table. We've got more chairs now. Yeah, there's space down here too. And don't worry, you won't be on the camera on this board. We are videotaping this on YouTube so that we can share with the other IWL chapters across the state. So back to 4 years ago, this was such a powerful opportunity. And in Idaho, we're so lucky that we are a smaller state, and we can get the governor in here to talk to a small group in this time. And I really want to thank Callie, the governor's staff, and Casey on the governor's campaign for helping organize this and put all this together. And who here is registered to vote? Okay, anyone's not? I think that's right. Yes. Like to see that.
Good girl.
It's very important to vote, and as you are often busy lawyers and often busy working mother lawyers, I recommend absentee ballots. They're free. You can just go online to the Ada County. You can ask for an absentee ballot. They'll send it to you. You can fill it out in your own home. You can take time to look at. There are a lot of elections on this ballot. You can call friends for help. You can research the candidates, whatever you want, but make sure you vote. It's really critical. Studies show that women do not vote as much in the off-presidential election years, and we're working hard to change that. So spread the word. You're all here, so I'm preaching to the choir. So what it's really about is friends and family. And I want to go back to 4 years ago because of how much this made a difference. Not only did we get to interact with the candidates and really ask questions, which we'll do here. We'll do a short intro with Kim, and then the governor will have some remarks, but the majority of our time is really for discussion and questions and interaction. And I promise we will absolutely will be out of here by 1, no later, so we can get back to work, maybe even a little early since you all were so prompt in getting here right by noon. But then the governor has agreed to stay and answer more questions if people have it. One of the things that was so powerful last time we did this was one of the things that's very important to Idaho women lawyers. Our mission is to help increase women and diversity in the judiciary and the legal profession. And so one of the big things we've been focusing on is how do you get more women to run for the judicial appointments, how do you get more women appointed? And Peg Doherty's here. You've been really active in helping do that over the years and help coach women and do mock interviews to really build that confidence factor. And one of the things we talked about with the governor 4 years ago is, who remembers this advocate issue? Yeah, we did this. This was 2011 in January. This was, as most of you know, the advocate. We have the different sections. And so this one was done by the Idaho women lawyers. And we had a really bad article here about how we were 51st in the state judgeships after all 50 states in D.C. And we talked to the governor about this, and it's been great to see him over the last 4 years really appointing a lot of women, not only to the bench, and Kim will talk about other appointments too, because that's another issue for the Idaho women lawyers is boards and commissions, not just the judiciary, but boards and commissions. And thinking more broadly, this is your time to ask the governor about all sorts of issues, because there's really not many issues that the governor's office doesn't touch. If you think about education and the appointment of the State Board of Education, if you think your commissions go everything from what, beans and lentils to potato.
Anybody want to serve on the bean and lentils commission?
All sorts of commissions, plus just everything really that affects our state. So it's a very important election and a chance to get engaged. So I think that's all my talking points. I'm very happy that Kim Turansky has agreed to introduce the governor. Like I said, we wanted to have one of our own women lawyers introduce the candidates. And Kim is an attorney. She's practiced on her own and at Sol Reed's. She's appointed by the governor to be the Department of Aging, head of the Commission of Aging, and now she's also the Deputy Administrator of the State Human Resources. That's correct. So it's a pleasure to have Kim here to talk about it. So no further ado, Kim, would you like to do the official introduction?
Thank you. I'm delighted to do the official introduction of my boss, the governor. I've known the governor since 2007. I am very pleased to be back here with Idaho Women Lawyers, a group that I've spent a good deal of my time with when I was in private law practice. And I wanted, if it's okay with everybody, I just wanted to share a little story because I go back to 1998 when I first met the governor. My husband and I were scheduled to attend a late summer fundraising event hosted at his ranch, and the governor hosts many events at his ranch. And this is back when he was the lieutenant governor. We had been at his ranch before during the summers. This summer was a little bit different because we had just had our first child, and he had been born with very, very compromised health due to severe prematurity. And so I had been told that I had to really limit the number of people once he came out of the hospital, and he'd been in for months, limit the number of people. So I wanted to go to this event because there were so many people at this event, Governor, who had supported us through that difficult experience. And so the event was outside, but I thought I would just take my son inside, but that's not really where the people were. People were outside, so I was in your house. But I had been told that I could do that. Anyway, so I had just gone inside the house, where it was very, very quiet, and nobody was there, and I was just sitting by the back door off the porch, and in came Butch Otter. And very energized, very, very friendly, smiling, and he said, "Oh, hello," and a tiny, tiny little son. And it was, I thought he would just say, "Well, I'm just coming to get something. I'm going right back outside." But he sat down and talked to me because he had a story to tell me of what he had been through and had a very positive experience with one of his children who had been born with some compromised health issues, and how successful her experience was. And so it gave me hope. So at that time, I thought, okay, that was pretty nice, to sit and talk to a stranger like me, and spend, however much time you spent. Well, you had all those other people at your house who needed attention. So I started really paying attention to what then Lieutenant Governor Otter did, and I became actually just quite a fan as I watched him as he went from being the Lieutenant Governor to Congressman, 3 terms. And then was elected governor in November of 2006. So I saw what a courageous person he is. And so I was just paying attention. I was just practicing law, but there came an opportunity in the summer, in July of 2007, and there was a need for a position to be filled on his cabinet, and I had an opportunity to apply for that. So I jumped at the opportunity. I actually shut down my small little law practice at that time, and by that time I had 3 children, and I interviewed for the position of administrator of the Commission on Aging, and then I did that for 4 years, and then I switched in 2011 to be head of the Division of Human Resources because I care very much about employment issues, employment law issues, and the state is the largest employer in Idaho. So when I would go to cabinet meetings there in the very beginning, I was struck by how many women I saw because I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I saw far more than I thought. And so I want to share with you a little bit about what I have seen as a woman, as an agency leader with the governor. For the agencies, and there are about 70 agencies that fall under the wingspan of the governor in the executive branch. About 30% of those agencies are led by women, and that are led by Sarah Thomas, previously by Molly Husky, who the governor appointed to the bench, and also the Office of Drug Policy, and Director Elisha Figueroa, Elisha, and previously by Debbie Field. And so those are particular appointments that intersect the court system. So I just wanted to mention those up front. There are other agencies that are heavily into the business of our state. Celia Gould heads the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Administration is led by a woman, Teresa Luna. The Industrial Commission, that 3-person commission, has an executive director, Mindy Montgomery. And I could go on and on. replacement at the Commission on Aging is Sam Hawes, and Sam is here. And Sam was previously an appointee of the governor. She served on the tax commission. So I could go on and on. I have more names, but I think the point is made that there are many, many women who serve in significant leadership positions under Governor Otter, and this is what I have been seeing since 2007. Beyond those appointments, I just wanted to mention that there's about 170 boards that the governor routinely makes appointments to, and I was just spot checking in the blue book, with the percentage of women on each one of those many boards, and I didn't crunch those numbers for you, but there is significant representation of women on the boards. Suffice it to say that I think it's a pretty positive story. And Governor, I've crunched all of this because I know you like data. I've worked with you a long time. You like numbers. You're a person of facts, and so I wanted to give these ladies who also care about evidence the facts. So that's my short introduction. I'm sorry if I've gone on too long. I have a lot of, yeah, right.
I got time enough for 2 questions.
Thank you, Governor, for giving me a great opportunity. You inspire me. You're one of 9 people in your family, the first one to go to college and finish college. So with that, I give you my friend, our governor, Butch Otter.
Thank you. That was very nice. Well, it's good to be back with you. Again, I think the first time I spoke to this group in Blanc was 4 years ago when I was a candidate for re-election for governor, and we met right across from the old Ada County Courthouse in the State Bar building. And there were a lot of questions that came forward, and thank you for all those statistics, Kim. I hadn't paid, I guess, that close attention because, I'd be the first to admit I look for the best person for every job. And what do I define as the best person? A person of character, a person that I can trust. When I'm going to put a person into a position, that person becomes my face. And so it's very important to me that I have a high level of confidence that the person can do the job, trust that they won't abuse the office in any way, because once again, that person, that cabinet member, that person representing an agency out in the public and being responsible for having to deliver state policy in the public has got to be confident in themselves that they know the stuff and they're not giving out any bad information that people then rely on and they take action. So it's important that they have the right kind of information, the correct information, facts, and that they then use those facts to establish public policy. Because really that's the business that government is in. As you know, as you separate the branches of government, and for the most part, I guess you folks operate in the third branch of government, or under Article 3, because of your involvement with the court systems or the adjudication of public policy. So, when I see these facts, after looking at them, last time there were a lot of questions. Why? How come we don't have a woman on the Supreme Court? How come we don't have more women appointed to the district courts? I posed a question, and I posed that first to the Judicial Council. I said, why are we anemic in getting folks, getting women to come forward and apply for judgeships when we have an opening? And so Dan Eisman kind of took the initiative, and he appointed under the appeals court Justice Lansing, Judge Lansing and Judge Gutierrez to go out and actually put on seminars and meet with not just women, but meet with folks that might be interested, and invited folks to come in and say, in order to be an applicant for judge, this is the process that you got to go through. First, you go through the Judicial Council, and sometimes we have, depending upon the district, sometimes we'll have 15 or 20 people that want to put their name up. Sometimes we have 4, sometimes 2, and a couple of times we've had 2. And so I was concerned about that. But after Lansing and Gutierrez went out and worked their magic with those seminars, well, we've had a tremendous influx. And if you'll look at what's happened in the last 4 years, that wasn't by accident. That was because the quality of the applicants really rose. And yeah, there were suddenly a lot more women step forward, because the Judicial Council has to give me 2, but no more than 4. And so if there's 15 people step forward and do an interview, I can only then review, and I interview the 4 that they give me, or the 2 that they give me. And so I've noticed not only that there's a lot more women now stepping forward and asking to be considered as a district judge, as in appeals. We haven't had any more vacancies on the Supreme Court, we had one on the appeals. But anyway, not just that there's more women, but there's more quality candidates. And I was concerned about that, because a couple of times when I only got 2 people, I went back to the Judicial Council and I said, I don't know what we got to do here, but we got to get more people interested in this, because there's really a terrible limitation when it appears to me for the justice in the state of Idaho at the district level, when we don't have higher quality candidates. So let me tell you, I applaud you, because obviously somebody was paying attention 4 years ago when I was being cross-examined about why I wasn't appointing.
You were being cross-examined.
When I was going through the cross-examination about why I wasn't appointing more women, I said I can't appoint them unless they step forward. I'm limited. In fact, as Kim was going through a lot of those appointments I made, a lot of those are very much similar. That if the association, the grain growers, has a empty position on the grain growers board, they're actually required to submit 3 names or something like that. 3 names, and then I can choose from those names. They have a right to their champions for their industry. We do very much the same for many other positions, especially when they're directly connected to an association like the Beef Council or a product like the Apple Board or whatever it is. Now, there are some exceptions to that. Fish and Game is an exception to that. The Highway Department, the State Highway Board is an exception to that. Those are 2 important ones. There's other important ones as well, but those are 2 important ones. The State Board of Education is probably the most important, because education is the most important job that we have in the state. So anyway, when somebody decides, when we have a vacancy on the State Board of Transportation, what I do is I say, Brad, to Brad Little, I say, Brad, let folks know that that's open. So it's advertised, the word goes out to anybody that we think might be interested into whichever district, highway district, that seat is open. And we'll get quite a few different applicants for that. Brad then will pick a team, and part of his team has to be the cabinet members that serve with the Transportation Board director. And the reason for that is monthly meetings with my cabinet, but they're broken down into cabinet groups that are synergistic. So for instance, we'll have the corrections meeting with juvenile corrections, with the highway patrol, we'll have those folks that have to have a lot of interaction and pardons and parole. Not only interaction, but we want them to help each other because basically that's what they do. Now I tried to move that around in my second term and it didn't work. They all kept calling their old cabinet group and saying, I got this problem, can you help me with that? And they weren't working with their new cabinet group. They got used to it, and it was they were relying on those other cabinet members as resources, which was great. That, I think exactly what I wanted to happen. Unfortunately, they didn't let me mess it up because that probably would have been the effect. But so we're back to that. But let's take, for instance, whether it's the Transportation Board or Fish and Game. I appoint the board. Then the board is, the Senate confirms or affirms my appointment or not. By and large, it's never a rubber stamp process. It's always a very vigorous, what do you know about, if it's highways, fish and game, whatever, education, what do you know about, and what have you done for it, and why would you be a good board member? Then in those cases, that board appoints the director. I don't. So the director of transportation, I don't get to appoint that person. Or the director of the Department of Fish and Game, or either the chairman or the director of the State Board of Education. I do not appoint the director. I appoint the board, and the board carries through with the public policy that they can agree on with the state legislature. And I have been impressed with the amount of people in Idaho that will step forward to serve on a board that there's no pay for it. There's all manner of abuse that they're going to get no matter what kind of a decision they make. Usually you're upsetting at least 30% of the people, if not more. And then everything that's wrong with it happened as soon as that person got on the board. And not only that,
these women.
and not only that, they have to live in that neighborhood. They have to live in that district. So Jim Colvin comes from the 1st District, way in the north, on the Transportation Board, and every pothole, every dangerous curve is his fault. Even if it's in the bridge, you name it. It's been there for all these years, and Jim's only been on the board now, I think, 3 years, but every one of those are his fault. And it's the same with education. It's the same with fish and game. As you go through, but in a way that's good because people now know that they have a local listener. They don't have to make a long-distance phone call from Bonners Ferry, Idaho to Boise, Idaho, in order to get an answer on a transportation issue. They can just call across town and talk to Jim right there in town, or talk to whoever their representative is for whatever board that they want to talk to, because we have broken the state down into regions. And so I find it's very good for public policy because they're also the ones that make public policy. They want to establish something in the state of Idaho in fish and game, like if they want to increase fish and game licenses, they've got to go to the state legislature. And they got to say, this is how much money additional money we're asking for. This is what we're going to do with it. And so it's transparent, extremely transparent. And also it's justifiable. They have to justify what they're doing. That's much more preferred as far as I'm concerned over a lot of things that we otherwise see in government. And I like the responsibility that they have to show, the feedback they give, and then also having to establish expectations. If you give me this extra $5 for a hunting license, this is what you can expect me to do with the money. And then you can actually go on our website and you can see where we spent the money. I like that part because then the local folks that have got involved and make assumptions that too many times are wrong, then they can go on the website and they can validate. They can figure out and they can say, hey, you said you were to spend that $5 on sportsman access, and you collected this $5 from these 300,000, 300,000+ people, and so that should have been $1.5 million, and you've only spent $1 million on it. Where's the other $500,000? Citizens can do that, and you know, I just think that's terribly important. Accountability is probably one of the toughest things to instill, because it's just so easy to say, I'm sorry, that's not my department. Or I'm sorry, that person is out today and you need to call back. Or you need to call this other department or this other person in this department. And we've really gotten away from that. And I believe one of the reasons we've gotten away from that is because if you take a look at about 80% of my cabinet members and my appointments, they all came out of the private sector. They were on the other end of that phone with some bureaucrat that said, oh, I'm sorry, that's not my department. And that's no longer acceptable. We had cases, whether it was, and maybe we still have a few in health and welfare. Maybe we still have a few in the insurance department. Maybe we still have a few in the licensure, in the professional licensure department. But by and large, we had cases that were over a year old, and where we didn't even know if they'd been actively worked when we came in. And so we set a standard, and that standard said, if you were sitting across the desk from that bureaucrat asking a question about what that bureaucrat's asking you, how soon would you expect an answer? Building departments, a good case. We're 2 weeks. For the most difficult permit, where we try to get it done within 2 weeks. In fact, in some cases now, you'll be able to go to the building supply people if you're remodeling part of your home or adding on a garage that you need a permit for, and there is going to be a kiosk in Home Depot. And it's 24 by 48, and it's going to be hooked onto the house, or it's going to be standalone. You can put all that stuff in, and out comes your building permit. And then once in a while, somebody will come by and they'll say, I need to check the electrical, and I need to check the plumbing. If you need plumbing in a garage, or whatever it is. But making it easier for people to be able to move forward in their lives. And there's nothing more frustrating than to have all the boards and all the nails and all the tools and the sawhorses sitting there, and maybe you've even poured the concrete pad and you just want to start building. And then you got to wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it is to pound the first nail. Because your expectation is you've got a time period you want to get this done in. And in order to get that done, you need the government to be responsive as well as responsible. And I think if we have accomplished anything uniformly in state government, it's our responsiveness to our clientele, which are the taxpayers. The numbers that Kim gave you pretty well speak for themselves in terms of and what we've done in the last 4 years. Currently, there are 54 appellate and district judges. Of those, 16 were appointed by other governors, 32 were appointed by myself for 59%, and then, of course, the rest were elected. Governor Otter made 32 appointments to the Supreme, to the Court of Appeals, and 28 to the district bench. So 28 out of, 51? Maybe there's more than that. Anyway, so for the Court of Appeals, down. Number of females now on the benches in Idaho in 2014. Now, you know, this is good for you to know, but I want you to bear one thing in mind. Man or woman, I want the best person for that position. Man or woman, and that's why, because of the quality of of applicants that we're getting now as a result of Lansing and Buchetta going out and putting on these seminars, and the Judicial Council would be a lot more diligent about their interviewing. That's why we've gone where we have gone in terms of those appointments. The last 9 appointments that I made, 5 of them were women. Not because they were women, I want you to understand that, because they were the best. They were the best that I thought could represent the justice system in the state of Idaho. And plus, I might say, have a little bit of bias. When I worked with a person like Molly Husky, and I saw the great innovations that she did out there at juvenile, and the efforts that she was making, or at the public defender, and but Sharon Hirschfeld did the exact same thing at juvenile. Anyway, when I have to admit, if there was one where I kind of felt I had it in my head that she was going to have a really bad interview to not be highly considered, but I would tell you this: the 2 of the other people that I interviewed, she was better. She was the best I could have hoped for in that group, and she performed very well. Plus, I admit to a certain bias. I've had all that working time with Molly. And when I get the feedback, I don't just appoint them and then walk away and forget about it. No, Roger Burdick will tell you. Patty Tobias will tell you that every year, twice a year, I sit down with the Supreme Court and I give them a tongue lashing for not having quality or more quality when I did that. More quality applicants for the judgeships, or we have our discussions. I ask about certain judges, and I didn't have to ask about Molly. I didn't have to ask about a couple of others because they just said, "Boy, that was a tremendous appointment," and she's making a tremendous difference. So with that, I sat here and blah blah blah. I kind of told you what my world looks like. Tell me what your world looks like, and how can I answer questions, any issue, anything. Yes?
It came out in the news, I think yesterday or maybe the day before, that women in Idaho are 51st, behind even the District of Columbia in median income.
Mm-hmm.
And men aren't much higher than that. We rank 48 for median income for men. So clearly in Idaho we have a living wage issue. And I would like to know what your thoughts are and what plans you have for addressing that if you're reelected.
Well, I think whether it's men or women, one area that I have concentrated on, and I think we've got a good plan going forward over the next 5 years, is in education. Companies, when they want to, companies in Idaho, when they want to expand, in order to satisfy that expansion, they need workforce. They need people that are ready to hit the ground running and go to work. Companies that are coming into the state, they may be looking for a little bit of a different workforce, and that's why I thought it was so important that when I became governor, I was told by the private sector, we can't hire the people that you're turning out of high school. And then I was told by the university sector, you know, one of the reasons college debt is going up, tuition debt and everything is going up, is because when these kids do get to school, we have to send them through a year or 2 or a year and a half of remedial English. Quite a few of them, not all of them, but quite a few of them, way too many. And so that's why we worked on reforming K through 12. And that's also why I've shifted to K through career. I think even though our unemployment is down to 4.7%, which is, I'm going to say, roughly 31,000, 32,000 people are out of work in Idaho. And that's way too many. But I got 20,000 jobs that I can't fill. And a lot of that has to do with education. That was one of the reasons I thought the College of Western Idaho was so important. We need as many portals throughout a person's life, K through career, K through retirement, for them to go back and get retrofitted into a new world. You know, somebody that works at a job, the job that they've got for 8 years, if they're not keeping up with it, or if they are keeping up with everything at that job, but suddenly that job gets automated, or it gets computerized, or somebody writes a software management system for it and it goes away, all of a sudden they are totally inadequate to shift from that job to another. So we need an education system that does that. The 20 recommendations that the task force made, I think is going to help me tremendously in K through 12. But if I can get those folks ready to go to college during their senior year, they're ready to go from their senior year to their freshman year of college, then they're probably ready to go to work somewhere in the workforce as well. So for the most part, I think what you're going to find is wherever we have a highly educated workforce, we're going to have a higher paid workforce. Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question for you and then to the audience real quick on some of what you said, because I really do appreciate your highlighting the Judges Gutierrez. You mentioned him out trying to recruit, and I just want to make a pitch for Idaho Women Lawyers, because it was 8 years ago that we did one of those first panels on how to get on the bench.
Oh.
And then we've, again, thanks to Peg and a lot of the group, really have been working on getting information on how to interview, mock interviews. So I know that Callie put some great numbers together. Will you also review those numbers?
I would.
So you got some really good numbers here. So because I want to show the difference this makes about getting women applicants that the governor was talking about. Because,
is that where you want to start?
Yeah, this is the one. Because from 2000 to 2003, women were only 13% of the applicants. 2003 to 2008, now we're starting to get them when we're trying to make it. Effort on this, again, of applicants. But in 2009 and 2012, 21% of the applicants. So, and 33% of the openings were filled by women, thanks to you. So I think that goes to the point of you've got to have the applicants to get people interested. So my question to the audience is, why aren't women applying for these judicial openings? Why aren't you applying? Why aren't you applying? Why aren't you applying?
First off, let me ask a question to go with that, and maybe that reflects back on your question. Well, and I really don't know, Callie, what does a district judge make?
I don't know.
I think that's one of the things.
About $115,000. Pardon me?
I believe it's 112. 109 for magistrate.
I'm at 112 and now 115.
There's not much difference between magistrate and district judges also. I think it's like 109 for magistrates, 112 for DJs.
Oh, okay.
So that's
and then you got what's the head guy in the district that gets an extra couple $1,000 a year?
Chief, yeah.
Or the head person.
Yeah, the administrative.
Okay, now, you know, I thought that was important to know.
Because I'm sure that is for some people in private practice. That's a barrier.
Well, you know, Britt, I served on the Judicial Recruitment Committee with Judges Lansing and Gutierrez, and when we did the statewide survey, the feedback that came back on why people were not applying for jobs in general was the pay was a big part of it. You have people who are 10 years of experience, which is required for a DJ position, and if you are 10 years of experience in private practice, you are likely to take a salary reduction if you're going to go on the bench. So that was a number one reason. The second reason was the belief that there was too much politics in the selection of the
selection?
bench. Yes. Yeah, and that was really overwhelming response. I don't know the governor. I don't know the people who are the decision makers. So what good would it do for me to apply if I'm not in the inside circle? So that if you have a belief system out there that is tough to combat.
Was there anything you could do during the seminar with Lansing and Gutierrez to dispel that?
I think Jim Carlson, who is the executive director of the courts, and judges Lansing and Gutierrez, they do go around to the judicial districts and talk a lot about the process itself and just demystify it for people to try and dispel just that. These are the things that we look at. This is what we give weight to. And this is how we make a decision to send names to the governor. IWL has taken another step. Just a week ago, we did a panel of judges, a Q&A panel of judges, where we had a room full of people who asked questions and heard from the judges about their own experience in applying and serving on the bench. And I think that has helped. But we also go to all the interviews and then help people to understand these are the kinds of questions that are being asked in the interviews. This is the kind of experience that seems to get attention in the interviews. So I think that there's a lot of groundwork being done to try and dispel the notion that it's all political.
I got a slogan on my wall. Anybody that's been in the office and going through this kind of a process, I sort of point that out to them. Because invariably, I will ask a candidate, do you think you're going to get this appointment? And if they say no, and I say, why not? And then they'll give me their reasons, and they come back to, well, I don't know you that well. I've heard of you, you've heard of me, okay, big deal. But some of these other candidates you might know better. But anyway, I got this slogan that says, sons and daughters of America, earn again for yourselves that which your Father has given you, or it will never be yours. So what earns people these positions is not who they know, or so much. It may get you in the room for an interview, but if the appointing officer, if the governor, if whoever's doing the appointing is doing the best possible job they can for the taxpayers, they're going to pick the best candidate, because once again, I want my best face out there in public. I don't want, because there's a failure in the Parks Department, I don't want somebody saying, well, Butch Otter's ruining the Parks Department. And I should have pointed out that Susan, the Parks Department is also one of those departments where they choose the director. I don't. But so they choose the director, and so the director really then becomes the face. But every one of the people that are on the board.
Ask a follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead. And there's another follow-up on this, but go ahead.
You say that you want to appoint the best person, and yet the population is made up of 50% women. And when you are a member of the population and you are looking at the judicial branch of government, it's difficult when you are not represented in the same manner. So when you are making a decision, are you putting any weight on the fact that Idaho is so skewed? We have 16% women on the bench. Percent of the population who are women. So are you giving thought to the importance to the populace of having a gender balanced bench?
That on a balance, that'll always come into play. I'm not going to appoint a woman to the bench that I don't think can do as good a job as the man I just interviewed, or that can represent the constitutional principles that I asked every candidate about. There are some in here that, Susan, weren't you at one time a candidate?
Yes.
For appeals or Supreme?
For appeal.
For appeal.
Thank you for
and the questions that I asked, went to the fairness, the rule of law. Usually jury nullification is one of the questions that I asked. What if you impanel the jury and send them out, and the jury foreman comes back and he says, Judge Buxton, we want to know what about jury nullification? What are you going to tell them? What are you going to tell the jury? What are you going to go in that jury room and tell them? Those are not easy questions to answer, especially if you weren't prepared for them. But I'm not going to put equal justice under the law at risk in order to balance things. I'm going to let you folks do that. And you folks are working rapidly in that direction.
There was another comment back there about things that might be barriers perceived for women.
I'm a recent transplant from Idaho. 7th district where we've never had a female judge on the district that held this policy.
Which?
7th district.
Oh.
I mean, 16th was down, but we've also not yet had a female.
6, 7 are 0. 5th district is 0. 2nd district is 0 currently.
The 2 reasons I would add that we have a hard time getting applicants over on the eastern side of the state. This vote, I guess there are 3. Statistically, I think women make up about less than 10% of the people on that side of the state. Simply got very few women coming to practice law. Whether that's a cultural issue of being from that area, going to law school and then returning to that area to practice, or I don't know, practice. We've got a new variable deficiency. There's the election factor of the district judge position. There are a lot of women who have not thrown their hat into the ring because they don't want to have to go through the re-election process of having to be elected by a primarily male-friendly environment. Eastern Idaho tends to re-elect their homeboys that they know and that they and I think there is still some difficulty with your nomination panels. I'm aware of one woman in particular who scored the highest on that form that they fill out, to throw their name in, and she did not even get an interview. This is a woman with a large number of years of experience.
So are you talking about the Judicial Council?
That council that then sends the nomination up to you, so you never even got her name because she couldn't get past that boys network because she was clearly, in terms of point value, the most qualified candidate for you to consider, but you didn't. So I think it's some of those numbers, I would argue, are fairly skewed towards Amy County, that while there is some progress over here, there's a lot of progress to be made on our outline.
Well, I was born and raised and grew up in Canyon County. And, there's a part of me that could easily say, Canyon County is one of those counties, one of those areas like you described. But there's been some tremendous strides over there in Canyon County. I think, especially in the last 4 years.
Is Allison Fuller here? This is Allison Fuller. She's a law student at University of Idaho, and she helped compile some of these updated statistics.
Oh, good.
So we will get this to IWL and get this to Callie, because Callie did a lot of statistics too. I'm a solution-oriented person, so what I hear is 3 opportunities. One, I know the research shows that women need to be asked at least twice to often run for office. So I challenge each of you, when there's openings, to encourage women to run, especially in the 2nd, 5th, 6th, and 7th district. If you know anybody there, call them now. Get them going. Please, if you ask your cabinets and spread the word that your networks need to ask people to run, and tell them that it's not all political. And I think that's what's been very helpful, having the governor talk about the process and that he's looking for this. And then on to the judicial pay. So what can you do to help us with the judicial pay?
Well, I'm not sure what I can do. I will be having my meeting with Burdick in the Supreme Court. Their issues become my issues.
You talk about quality, and that's, if you really want the quality judges, you gotta have to pay.
Where we can agree on. Part of the problem is that everybody gets very comparative. A district judge that I appoint makes almost as much money as I do, and makes more money by twice, by maybe 3 times, than a legislator who's going to vote on how much. Conservative in Idaho. And so I'm not sure that you can build a groundswell for a tremendous effort in the legislature for increasing the judge pay. We just solved, or are in the process of trying to solve, the retirement. And the retirement, you know, has gone from, no, we don't want anything to do with you guys in Idaho by the judges, all the way to now, no, now we want to be part of your system. And so that was a little expensive and will be expensive for a little while until we get the judges' retirement up to where they expect it to be. So, you know, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, and I'm not going to promise you something I can't deliver on.
We understand the political realities, but we do appreciate your taking a lead on this because you are seeing the data of what, you know, if you're not getting the applicants you want, you're the one who could tell the legislature that that's factor.
Well, going back to your question or your statement relative to that, you know, I'm thinking that who do we on the Judicial Council? Take a look at the makeup of the Judicial Council. And maybe that's where if we get the right kind of applicants, that we can make a difference. It's only 25%.
How is that appointed? I don't even know. I'm embarrassed
I
to say I don't
appoint.
know. You appoint.
Not all of them.
Not
Not all of them.
Well, the
There's-
Supreme Court
And state bar.
and the State Bar.
So Governor,
How
while
many does
you're
the State Bar appoint?
while you're talking about pay, I know we're talking about judicial positions, and for us as lawyers, a lot of times we kind of look through the lens of judicial positions, but I think that a lot of these roles are somewhat, everything factors into the realities of the decisions that are made in our state. Having women in leadership roles plays a huge component into the decisions that are made that affect women. Having and encouraging women to take on those roles and leadership within our state is an important part of what we want to support here and what we want to know. But in our state, I think our state is 19% below the surrounding states in the pay for the public workforce. And then when you layer that on top of the fact that women, the disparity between men and women is the largest in Idaho, or one of the largest in Idaho compared to the other states, you've really magnified the problem of getting women into leadership roles in state positions. And so what I'm wondering is, while you might not have as much control over the judicial pay, you do have a considerable amount of control over the pay for your state employees. A magnified problem than what we see even at the judicial side. And so what is it that your office can do, or that you can do under your leadership to help decrease the disparity between men and women in general in state positions in Idaho, but then also to bring Idaho's state positions for both men and women up to more of a competitive rate?
Last time I looked at the figures, and we have a system where we match state employee positions against private sector positions. And when you get up into the higher positions, you know, well, the folks that are kind of running the place, we're pretty anemic. You know, the receptionists, the clerks, the secretaries, we're competitive. But when you get into those higher positions where well, let me put it this way, if I were in the private sector running a $2.9 billion corporation and responsible for 25,000 employees, 17,000 of which are full-time employees and the rest are part-time employees, I would probably be making more than the CEO at Heckler, who was the highest paid person. But we don't measure it that way. So what I'm saying is that as we go through and measure that plan in Idaho, we're about 70% of market. For somebody to come in and pick off one of my accountants in the finance department to go out and be a bank auditor instead of continuing to work for Gavin Gee at the accounting department. And the IRS is notorious for coming in and raiding, whether it's the tax department or the accounting department, right, Sam? To get federal auditors, and that now they've even, because of the computers and everything, they say, well, you can live in Boise, and we'll pay you another $12,000 more than you were getting at the tax department, and you can still live in Boise. You don't have to, and you'll just communicate from there. So we measure ourselves against that in Idaho, and every year the CEC. This year, the change in employee compensation will meet, and they'll suggest some kind of an adjustment where hopefully we can be more competitive, because turnover costs us a lot of money. If we have to bring in a new person and teach them the job, we lost about 6 weeks of good productivity by the time that person really learns that job and they can do it on their own. And they don't need another person standing there looking over their shoulder. So yeah, I'd like to be competitive, but where are you going to get the money? That's always the biggest question. Is where are you going to get whose taxes are you going to raise to get the money, or who are you going to shortchange so you can pay somebody else more? And that's not an easy decision to get a board of directors of 105 different personalities, the state legislatures, to agree with you. When I became governor in 2007, I wanted a 5% increase in my state of the state, not only for 07, but I wanted it for 08, 09, and 10, and that would have then got us up competitive with the private sector. So the person that had a job in the private sector commensurate with responsibility and duties in the public sector would have been paid pretty close to the same. We always used to push that off by saying, well, we've got a better insurance system, we got a better retirement system, so our pay isn't as great as the private sector, but our perks are better. And there was a time when, if you were a state employee, your insurance policy was really good. In fact, we had to go through and do an audit because we had husband and wife working. Wife worked for the state, husband worked for, I won't mention the name of the corporation in Boise. But she put him on her insurance policy because her insurance was so much better. The state insurance policy was so much better than the corporation, and it was a fairly upstanding corporation. But we found that time and time again, where when we had spouses, one spouse working for the state, another spouse working for a company in Idaho, they would always opt to put them on the family plan state level.
And what about the disparity? Can you talk to the gender disparity in pay? Because it's across the nation, right, that there's a gender disparity in pay, but Idaho's is even greater than what the rest of the nation is.
Well, I think I've done a good job, at least when I've replaced a man with a woman. I've given them the same pay. I haven't lowered the pay because I brought a woman on board. In fact, I think probably Celia Gould made more than any former Secretary of Agriculture. And she's the first woman Secretary of Agriculture in the state of Idaho.
So in my commitment to keep us on time, just in closing, and the governor has agreed to come up, he'll stay for questions. If you have questions, you can still come up. I just want to do quickly, the Judicial Council is 7 members, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, a district judge, 2 lawyers appointed by the Idaho State Bar, so that's an important point about having people like Molly O'Leary and women on the Board of Commissioners on the State Bar, and 3 non-attorney members appointed by the governor. So, Governor, we make a pitch for you again when you're looking for those appointments to really be looking. They'll be non-attorneys, so it won't be our members, but women and diverse candidates that can on the Judicial Council. Currently, it's Roger Burdick, Phil Rieberger, Joel Hazel, Stephen Tuft, 2 women, Elizabeth Chavez, Kathy Simpson.
I appointed her.
Good job. Honorable Thomas Ryan and Thomas Borison.
Well,
And I appointed Kathy Simpson.
Before we go to, I have one more that I have to ask for our membership. But Idaho Women Lawyers we have a gala that we do every 2 years It's celebrating women in the law. What we know is, for a fact, even from your talk today, is that as we raise awareness and the political profile of the issues that our organization champions, we see results. We see results from you, we see results from your leadership, we see results from our membership applying more, or the women in our bar applying more. So Idaho Women Lawyers would like to invite you to our organization's gala on March 4th, 2015. And we would ask your office to sponsor so that we can raise that awareness as well and show that there's a partnership.
What is it cost?
Well, there's different levels. But we'll send it to you.
Let me see what the CEC does with my salary.
Right. But we'd like, our members, it's affordable for our membership, so it wants it to be affordable for you. But we think it's important to have your support and the association that you bring to our organization. We think we would benefit from it, and we think you would as well.
Good. And this is your first?
It'll be our second. We did our first one in 2013.
So in closing, remember to vote. Remember to run for office. Remember to encourage others to run for judicial.
Get an absentee
Get on
ballot.
the judicial ballot council, and please join me in thanking the governor for his time today.
Thank you. Get those absentee ballots. No. Well, I tell you what. Like I say.